Good afternoon. I'm Moira Fraser, the clerk to this afternoon's Governance and Ethics Committee meeting. And on behalf of the chairman, I would like to welcome you all, especially if you're watching the meeting on the live stream. I'm assisted by Stephen Chard, who will be acting as the Zoom host of the meeting. The meeting will be chaired by Councillor Jeff Beck and Councillor Jeremy Cottam as the vice chairman. The other members of the committee in attendance are Councillors Rick Jones, Jeff Mays, Tony Linden, Tom Marino, David Marsh and Andy Moore, and James Cole. We also have our two parish council representatives on the committee, Councillors Jane Langford and Barry Dickens present. Parish councillors are not permitted to speak at the meeting. Are permitted to speak, but they are unfortunately not permitted to vote on any of the items. Joseph Holmes, Andy Walker, Judy Gillespie and Kathleen Bogus are the officers who will be advising the meeting. We also have Barry Morris and David Johnson from our external auditors, Grant Thornton, present. If they do wish to address the committee, we will have to suspend standing orders to allow them to do so. Councillor Jo Stewart, who is the portfolio holder for this area, is also in attendance, and she would also have to be allowed to speak by the committee should she wish to do so. Members, standard Zoom reminders are set out in the slide, hopefully now being displayed. If it becomes necessary for any members to telephone into the meeting, you won't be able to signal to speak. So once everyone who has raised a Zoom hand has spoken, I will ask the chairman to invite anyone who has signaled to be able to speak at that moment of the meeting. Voting on items will take place by physically raising your hands, and the clerk will confirm the outcome of each vote. Unless the committee asks for the vote to be recorded, the outcome of the vote will not appear in the minutes. So anyone wishing the vote to be recorded must indicate this before the vote is taken. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, the chairman will advise us, and he will also advise us of the revised time and date of the meeting. If it's a short adjournment, you will be able to rejoin the meeting using the Zoom link sent out earlier this evening. That's everything from me, Chairman. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Maura. Moving now to item 1, can I ask, have we had actually any apologies for this evening's meeting, please?
Chairman, I can confirm that Councillor Claire Rolls has given her apologies and Councillor James Cole is substituting for her.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, James Cole. Right, moving to item 2, the minutes. Members, you have got the minutes of the last meeting. Could I possibly have a proposer and a seconder for the minutes, which were held on the meeting of the 16th of November, that they represent a true record of what took place?
Happy to propose.
Seconded. Ned. Could I have a show of hands for all those in favour to accept these minutes, please?
Chairman, I can confirm that those minutes are approved.
Thank you very much indeed.
If I could just ask, Chairman, that you give me authority to use your electronic signature to add a signature to the minutes of the meeting.
Yes, could you do that by a show of hands, please?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right you are. Moving to item 3, declarations of interest. Moira, do we have any declarations of interest specific to this evening's meeting, please?
Chairman, I've not been advised of any, but the members may wish to raise some from the floor.
Right. Does anybody have anything they wish to raise? I assume that is a no.
No, Chairman, Councillor Tom Marino has his hand raised.
Sorry.
Just as usual, number 7, the strategic risk register. The I think it's number 11, the East Area Pupil Referral Unit. I'm involved with Tyler's Parish Council, who's the owner of the land in question.
Okay, thank you. Roger, thank you. Right, item 4, the forward plan. You've actually got 2 items on there, 3934 and 3892, which are both actually included in this evening's meeting and will therefore not need to be held again on the 19th of April. apart from that, officers and members, do you have any other amendments that you would like to make with regard to the forward plan? Yes.
Chairman, if I may,
Yes, you may.
looking at the forward plan items, I don't see any item that follows up on the action plan that was instituted last year for the committee itself. I wondered if that should be on the agenda somewhere.
Right.
Chairman, if I could answer, that should be, you're quite correct, Councillor Jones, and it will be added for the 19th of April meeting.
Great.
Okay. Thank you much indeed. Okay. Right. Item 5, which are the audit findings for West Berkshire Council. This was actually sent out as a separate set of papers on the 28th of January at 9:45. I trust you all have them. Anybody who not got those papers? Right, you are. Right. Could I ask Shannon Coleman Slaughter to actually introduce this report, please?
Hello, Chairman. It's not Shannon Coleman Slaughter. It's Joseph, but hopefully I will do as a.
I see. You've got a skirt on, have you? Right. Okay.
Right. I'll just go through these items. So item 5 and 6 are interlinked.
Right.
I'll just actually start with item 6. Item 6 is our revised financial statements. We put the draft financial statements up on the website at the end of August in line with our statutory deadlines, and the committee are being asked this evening to approve those financial statements in light of the external auditors report, which is at item 5. So at item 5, we have the external auditors report from Grant Thornton and Mr. Morris. Mr. Johnson will go through that. But if I sort of just highlight their work in there, there's two opinions the external auditors have to provide, one on the main financial statements and one on the value for money side. The proposal is at the moment is that both are unqualified. However, there is a few days further work that the auditors just need to complete, and also need to have a further update from the Berkshire Pension Fund. So there's a recommendation in paper 6 to delegate to the chair of the committee in consultation with myself as the section 151 officer to approve those financial statements once those updates have been done. The external auditors report is set out in front of you, and as I said, Grant Thornton will talk to that. There's a couple of amendments that have been made to the financial statements since we produced the draft ones at the end of August, which are recognised in here, the largest of which is a movement of just over £6 million, where we had overstated assets and have reduced those down. There's no impact on the bottom line. It's a valuation amendment. There is an amendment to when I say amendment to the bottom line, that's it's an amendment to any about reserves or out-term position at all. So it's a valuation judgment, and that has been reduced down to reflect that. As have any of the significant amendments which have been proposed in here by Grant Thornton. They've also provided an action plan as well, which we've provided initial responses to. But at that point, Chairman, I'll hand back to you and over to Grant Thornton.
Right, you are. Thank you. Members, do you have any questions to ask of Joseph Holmes, please? Nothing at all? No questions? Okay. In that case, Joseph, I suppose we can go back to item 5. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Chairman. You asked the external auditors.
Right. Okay. In which case we actually have Barry Morris and David Johnson, and we will need to suspend standing orders to allow them to actually address us, which I'm sure they do. Could I actually have a proposer and a seconder for that, please? Thank you very much indeed. All those in favour? Show of hands. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Can I invite Barry and David to actually introduce agenda item 5 for us then, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. So if I kick off, my words will be very brief because everything that I was going to say, Joseph has already said. So thank you very much, Joseph, for summarising the report. So as Joseph said, we have nearly completed our audit. There are a few items which are still outstanding and we're just waiting for queries to come back, both from the council's own finance team and from the pension fund auditor as well. So they have sent us their letter of assurance, which we've identified there on page 9 as items that are still outstanding. But actually they've sent to us saying that their work is still ongoing. So until they've concluded their work, we are unable to issue our audit opinion. As Jovis has said, we have identified some adjustments that have been needed to the financial statements, and those have been processed through the accounts, and our intention is to give an unqualified opinion on both the financial statements and on the value for money conclusion. Chair, I would just like to emphasise, so I know it's the 1st of February today, and I know there was a delay in certifying your 2018-19 accounts. We are in a better position than we were last year, so we are closer to certifying the 19-20 accounts. This is much later than we planned, but again, just to put into some context for members. So nationally, I think our current intelligence are there's about 200 audit opinions that have yet to be given in terms of the local government environment. So West Berkshire is far from being on their own. That's the latest information that we have, and we are quite close to be able to conclude the audit opinion. COVID has had a significant impact upon the audit, both in terms of the delay in completing the audit, and that's as a result of everybody working remotely, both officers and ourselves. And I would just like to put on record our thanks for the work that officers have been going through. Audit is clearly not the biggest priority in terms of the finance team, who've quite rightly been focusing and prioritising their time on supporting local residents and local businesses, as well as working to pull the financial statements together and respond to our audit inquiries. They have done so very effectively, and we are very grateful for that. Inevitably, things have taken longer as a result of that, and there's inevitably an impact on the audit fees that I can touch on at the end. Chair, with your permission, what I'd like to do is hand over to David, who will summarise some of the key elements of the audit, and then obviously I'll be able to come in at the end and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, please do so. Okay.
You're on mute, David.
No, I every time. It's always when I'm with you, Barry. I don't know why. But anyway, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Barry. So as Barry has said, he's introduced the work and sort of outlined some of the areas that we're still working on and looking to complete in the coming days. I will take the report as read and just go through and pick out a couple of key points and some of the issues that we've come across, and then hand back to Barry to touch upon fees again, and we can then take any questions. So just sort of jumping ahead to, it is our page 8, your page 14 in the pack. One of the significant risks is obviously around the valuation of land and buildings and investment properties, and there is it is one of these areas that we consider to be the possibility of material misstatements, i.e. over and above the value that we've set in the materiality section of this report. You'll see here that, as Joseph's already touched upon, we actually found 2 issues with the investment properties, one where there was a double count of land, which resulted in a 6.1 million adjustment, and then another asset that had been incorrectly classified within investment properties. Although that may seem churlish, I think the code by which we do carry out our audit has specific requirements in terms of how these assets are valued, and therefore the categorisation is a relatively important part of the process that we do. You will also see here that in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and in line with the RICS guidance who provide guidance to the valuers, we believe there is a material uncertainty in the value of assets at the balance sheet date to reflect the uncertainty of markets and other information available to valuers due to the pandemic. The next issue is on page 15. Very briefly, again, Barry's touched on this. We have received a letter of assurance, and there are a couple of issues in that we will need to follow up, and we'll do so again in the next week or so. Page 16, our page 10, your page 16. I just wanted to highlight this provision of supporting documentation. So I'm not sure provision of supporting documentation actually articulates the issue particularly well. What we're trying to say here is there were a number of balances within the statement of accounts that when we requested the population, the transactions and the data that made up those populations, we were struggling to get those. And on a number of occasions, the management, the finance team, Shannon and her team had to provide an ad hoc report. So they had to write the report in order to provide that population. You know, in an ideal world, you'd have a balance, you'd press a button and the system would spit out the transaction listing, and we'd walk off with that and sort of do our testing, because obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, the receipt of the population is not the final part. We then have to do some work on that to make sure that we're comfortable with the population, and the ad hoc nature of some of these reports does cause us some skepticism. We just have to be doubly sure. But as you can see here, the council are aware of this, and there are steps being taken to address this going forward. There are two considerations of key estimates and judgments, your page 17, our page 11, and also the following page. You will see that we've rated these as yellow and red, and it is in line with the key below. So the reason for the red on the level 2 investments is the value. So the fact that the value is over materiality means that we consider that it will be potentially materially misstated, and as has been shown from the testing, it is. And whilst the other one on page 17, which is yellow, is not material, the size of the issue means that we consider that there is an issue there within the process that the council need to address. Moving on, there are no issues with the pension fund in terms of the entries in the account. Going concern, we still have to complete, but I don't anticipate there being any issues from that. The next area is page 23 onwards, is value for money. Members will be aware last year we reviewed financial sustainability as well. I feel the picture this year is a better picture for a number of reasons. Those, as you'll have seen in the body of the text, those on-demand services have performed much better this year, and therefore have created an element of ease in the budget and the financial position of the council. Clearly, the big issue going forward is going to be, or was at the time of this, was the impact of COVID and the reduction in income. But the discussions I've had with Joseph as part of this review and looking at the various documents would indicate that actually the funding provided by government to meet the majority of that shortfall, and therefore I don't expect this to have too much of an impact going forward, albeit that we anticipated potentially that COVID would have been finished before this point. Moving on, your page 28, our page 22 is the action plan. We have provided an assessment of how we feel these various risks and issues will impact the council, and you will see that management have provided a response. The only sort of caveat to that, or the thing I would draw members' attention to, is that actually on pages, our pages 25 and 26, your page 31, 32, there were a couple of issues from last year that we feel haven't been addressed in terms of, the actions that were in place, whilst maybe have been put in place, they haven't had the desired effect, or they have not been put in place because the review of the accounts would suggest that these issues that we identified last year have been identified again this year, which has meant that we are those points have been carried forward into the 1920 action plan. Outside of that, the pages 33 and 34 are the adjustments that Joseph mentioned earlier. You'll see this is the two large adjustments that we've referenced earlier in the report. There are a couple of disclosure emissions, and you can see that the impact on the property investment property adjustment is not on a single line. It's not a single balance sheet. It is impacts throughout the statement of accounts, and those have been processed in line with our expectations. Finally, Appendix C is those adjustments from last year for your reference and the reasons that they weren't adjusted in the prior year being their valuation. As Barry has already touched upon, and as you will have seen from those disclosure emissions and the number of adjustments had to go through the accounts, it was not an insignificant task. And again, I'd like to just reiterate what Barry says, that I'd like to thank the finance team, Shannon, Joseph, Andy, and their team for their hard work and making sure that they responded to our queries in a timely manner. I will hand back now to Barry for just to update slightly on fees, and then I'm sure we can take any questions.
David,
Thank you very much, David. Thank you. Members, do you have any questions which you would like to raise with Barry with regard to these set of papers, please? Any questions? To be or not to be? Yes, Councillor Cole.
I get the impression from reading the documentation and from listening to you that you are not unhappy, but you're reaching a conclusion that things are actually not too bad. Yes, a couple of mistakes have been made that have been corrected, but actually this looks perfectly reasonable. Is that a fair assessment?
Thank you, Councillor. So as far as auditors can be happy, we're happy with the statement of accounts. Again, what you'll see is we have gone through. We've given the accounts and possibly the finance team a good kicking to make sure that the tires are okay. We have processed a number of adjustments from our work, and therefore we are satisfied. I would just draw attention, as David has referred to, there are two emphasis of matters that we will be including in relation to the material uncertainties around the valuation of property, plants and equipment, investment properties, and the share of property assets within the pension fund. But again, that's the same across the entire sector. So yes, I think to use the double negative, we're not unhappy.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. That pretty much surmises my sort of view of the situation as well, for what that's worth. Okay. Anybody else got any questions? Right. In that case, I'll assume that we're in a position to proceed. Can I ask members to actually vote on the? Sorry, my apologies on this one. This is number 5. We don't actually need to actually vote on this one. We just need to note it only. But bearing in mind that we actually, at Joseph's request, we dealt with item 6 first. We did not actually vote on that one. And we need to, with regard to item 6, we need to vote by accepting or otherwise the recommendations in that section of the papers. Could I have a proposer, please, and a seconder? Righto, that's a proposer. Seconder, yes, okay. All those in favour?
Chairman, I'm just need to clarify that we're voting subsequent with the to include the amendment around the information, the final figures from the Berkshire Pension Fund, and for yourself and Joseph to sign off those accounts.
Yes, obviously these have got to follow. I think we all appreciate that. Is that, and I would guess that that is generally accepted. Is that correct? Yep, okay. Are you happy with that, Clerk?
I am, Chairman.
Right.
And just to confirm, Chairman, that we just need to reinstate standing orders again.
Yes, I appreciate that. Right, members, thank you very much, Barry and David, for this evening's contribution. On behalf of this committee, and I'm sure on behalf of all the council members, can I say thank you to both of you and to your team who work so well with our staff officers during what has been a very, very difficult time. Thank you very much indeed. Right, okay. So could a proposer and seconder to reintroduce standing orders? Okay, in favour? Okay, right you are. We can now proceed to item 7. That is to consider this independent review carried out by Sir Tony Redmond during the latter part of last year. Joseph, you were going to introduce this to us, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much, Chairman. So over the past year, MHCLGs, that's the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, asked Sir Tony Redmond to have a look at local government audit and to see how it's working, how effective it is, what the market looks like. I think helpfully as well, Mr. Johnson has held on, if you don't mind, David, holding on for this one. To have a look at kind of how the market was and, you know, is it functioning, etc., etc. There have been a number of local government audits which have been late, some of which have been very late, so well over a year delayed, and also in the procurement of local government audit, there are not a huge amount of providers out there who are bidding for contracts. And also audit fees have started to nudge up quite a bit at the behest of providers. So I think the government want to have a good review as to what's going on. So Tony Redmond came in and did that, and announced his findings in the autumn, and MHCLG actually responded to them alongside the finance settlement just before the just before Christmas. So this paper just sets out some of those recommendations and some of MHCLG's responses. There are some impacts, certainly for us, both as a chairman, as your committee, and also on full council. I won't go through the whole list, which is set out in here, but so some of the highlights in there. So one is around reporting to full council, and it links in actually to a paper which we took to a previous governance and ethics committee, where actually we were requesting for an independent sort of audit member to sit on this committee, and actually that's ended up being part of the Redmond review proposals and accepted. So as a committee, we're probably a little bit ahead of some of the proposals there. Also in there is an annual report going to full council, which actually again we sort of referenced in the update to the governance and ethics committee. There's also government's looking at asking, and it'll be Barry for us to come along to full council every single year as well, to do a presentation a bit like he's done tonight, but on a more summary level, I think. But we'll have to see how that plays out. On the work of external audit. In the last year, there have been a variety of quite high-profile public interest reports issued. Now, for a number of years, not many public interest reports have been, but indeed there was one issued only last week in respect of Northampton Borough Council as well. So I think with that increase in public interest reporting, I think the government will be keen on external auditors coming on to full council now as well once a year to update. I think Mr. Morris wanted to sort of update on audit fees. So Redmond Review recognises the pressures within the external audit market and have outlined some potential changes to fees. We've seen some increases in fees from Grant Thornton already here at this committee. So highlighting some of the potential changes to fees into the future. We'll have to see how that plays out. And also just picking up on Ms. Morris's points earlier around certainly an increase in number of audits which have not been signed off. So I think when I had the latest look from the Public Sector Audit and Appointments organisation, well over 50% of audits had still not been completed when we were putting the papers together for this afternoon's meeting. So if you have a look in table on page 125 of the pack onwards, it's got the 23 recommendations in there. I've tried to provide a bit of commentary on what they might mean for us, and the full report is included there at Appendix A.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, do you have any questions or comments you wish to actually make to Joseph with regard to this set of papers? Please carry on.
Yeah, thank you. It was just going back. Yes, going back to section 3, it's referring to a 25% increase. Is that a general or up to, or is that what it's going to be?
So there's a couple of pieces in there. So one is around sort of fee variations are kind of up to 25%. But future audit fees coming through will be for the external auditors to propose here and at 350 odd other council meetings across the country. I mean, there was only a sort of re-procurement of external auditors that took place only sort of 18 months, 2 years ago. So, of course, from a sort of financial point of view, it's disappointing to see an increase in fees, but the independent review is recognising that the market out there is not a very buoyant one for people to choose auditors from. So at a local level, we'll have to see. At a national level, I think it's trying to allow for greater flexibility rather than councils having to go back through this PSAA organisation all of the time for any increases to fees.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James Cole, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Joseph, listening to you and talking about the requirement for the external auditor to present a report, that's item 12 on the list on page 127 of the main pack. Or is it page 131? It's printed page 127. The comment there is unsure of the value of this, but listening to you, I got the impression that you had concluded that there was value. Are you confusing me?
No, I suppose that. So I was just perhaps giving you my view on that. To an extent, my view doesn't really matter, Councillor Cole, because it's whatever central government will put in place here. I think probably just for the committee, as you see, there's we provide training for members on interpreting the financial statements and so the role in approving them. They are a large document, and you have normally Barry and David along at least one of them to every single governance and ethics committee meeting, so that they can contribute to different papers as well as just their own. So I think my comment there is there's a lot of information in here. I just question the value as the code is at the moment for the auditors to audit against, as to what full council will get that you can't do here as a committee. And I think where the value would come if there was more work done on the value for money side of things, because I think at a full council level, one of the other key functions of full council is to approve the budget. That would give you, as a full council, perhaps some more information on the value for money side of things when you come along to budget setting and any of the risks highlighted there. But certainly when it's focused on, say, sort of the core financial statements, unless the external auditor, had not for 18 months signed off the accounts and there's sort of a big sort of alarm bells ringing, I struggled perhaps to see some of that added value that's been brought. But Mr. Morris might well have a comment on that, or may not want to.
So, Councillor Rick Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I looked at the table of recommendations. It's a good summary in the council report. Looking at the comments associated with them, most of them either appeared to be being considered by the government department, and we were waiting for responses, or some of them had happened. Others, as a council, we had already taken some action. I couldn't see where, as a committee, having the report just coming to us, whether there was anything that we should actually be doing as a result of this report. I just wondered if there was something I've missed.
No, thank you, Councillor. So not particularly. It is here for information. When I originally wrote this report, it was here for the committee to consider and consider if there's anything different you want to do. However, MHCLG beat me to it in responding to the report to consider if we want to preempt. So it is really here for information to show that there are some changes around some of your roles as councillors, both or there will be at governance and ethics and at full council in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Right, Councillor Linden. Tony.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Sorry I was a bit late, but I also had trouble getting in. Yeah, I do governance and audit on the Fire Authority, and we've also had delays on the accounts, especially on the Berkshire pension scheme, and also dealing with fee increases as well, which has gone to negotiation. But this is obviously a different auditor. So just to let you know on that, I take it we haven't yet gone on to the annual accounts yet, have we, Joseph?
Apologies, actually, Councillor, they have been approved under the previous item.
Okay, fine. So I can't. Yeah. All right then. But that's all I wish to mention, Chairman. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to actually speak or raise a question on this item? Right. Joseph.
Excuse me, Chairman. You've got Mr. Morris with his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Clerk, do we need to reinstate orders, standing orders?
We do need to suspend them again, Chairman. Sorry about that.
Again, yeah. Right. Could I have a proposal to suspend standing orders? Okay. All in favour? Thank you. Okay. Please carry on.
Chair, thank you. Sorry, I know you have to set aside standing orders for me to speak, so that's why I tried to wait. So Joseph did say whether I would had any comments on this.
Yes.
So sure. Grant Thornton's view is very much we support everything that Sir Tony has identified within his review. I think the specific comment that Joseph was saying was around the auditors making reports to full council. I think that really is just a realignment of the work that yes, we'll be doing around the value for money work, but also, as Joseph indicated, where there have been significant issues identified within councils. So as Joseph said, there's been a number of public interest reports that have been issued this year by auditors. And I know that the firm has issued a couple in the last couple of months where there have been some significant failings within local authorities, where it's absolutely appropriate that full council hear what the messages are that's coming from the external auditors, so that they have the opportunity to question them as to what needs to happen going forward. So as I said, we do support the findings of the Redmond review, and we look forward to seeing how the government will take that forward. We know MHCLG have already responded to some of those, and we will continue to work with the council to make sure that we continue to deliver a high quality audit service.
Can I ask you one question, which I'm sure you will not surprise you that somebody is going to ask you, and that is, would you like to comment on this potential increase of 25%, which by most people's standards would deem to be excessive? Without knowing all the detail, obviously.
Chair, I'll take you back. So a 25% increase may seem excessive. I would take you back to if we were 10 years ago, your audit fees would have been 3 times higher than they are today. So I think one needs to look at any increase on today's fees against the backdrop of the significant savings that has occurred over the last 10 years. I would also draw members to the example or the graph on page, in paragraph 5.4 in page 125, which shows the outcome of the quality reviews that have been undertaken. Now, in some ways, that sort of shows that actually audit quality has remained fairly consistent, but increasing a little bit over the latter years. That's against significant changes to the quality regime. So if you go back to 2015-16, the requirements of the inspectors and the regulators were not as high as they are now. So actually the amount of work that we need to undertake to give a safe audit opinion has increased significantly. I would also refer members to the chart on paragraph 5.2 on page 124. And interestingly, does the external audit process cover the right things given the primary users of the accounts, where only 18% of people said that yes, the external auditors look at the right things. David has gone through in our audit work. The vast majority of our audit work is on the valuation of property, plant and equipment and on the pension liabilities. That's driven purely by the accounts having to be prepared under international financial reporting standards and the code requiring that by SIPFA. That requires the accounts to have annual valuations, etc., etc. That requires a significant amount of audit work. And again, members will be aware of that both from last year's audit and from this year's audit report. So actually the things that the authority in the sector need to do is simplify the overall accounts process. And another good example of that, to go back to my 10 years ago, a major local authority's set of accounts were 80 pages long. That same authority has a set of accounts that's 240 pages long as of today. All of that results in additional audit work, as well as additional audit work from your finance team or from the finance team. So again, I agree that 25% seems a large increase based on today's money, but actually it still doesn't put you anywhere near what the audit fees used to be.
Thank you. Councillor Linden.
Yes, I just need an advice from Moira whether or not I need to abstain from the vote because I came in late on this item.
Chairman, if you haven't heard the whole debate, Tony, then I would, Councillor Linden, then I would recommend not voting on the item.
I won't be voting on the item, Moira.
Thank you both. Thank you. Okay. Any further questions for Barry? No, right. Thank you, Barry.
Sorry, Chairman. I just had one more, which just to clarify. I know Barry is talking about public interest reports. Just want to clarify here that we don't have a public interest report here at West Berks that Barry needs to come along to a full council to report on.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. In that case, if there are no more questions, can I have a proposer and a seconder to reintroduce standing orders, please? Okay, all those in favour? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Right, final word from you, Joseph. From the point of view of we are asked to sort of vote on the recommendation, the recommendations which you've got basically are covered on pages 126 and 127. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chairman. The recommendation is actually on page. It's recommendation in section 2, which I think is page 121.
Sorry.
It was to comment on and suggest any further amendments if you had them.
Okay. So, where are your recommendations then?
I think my one on this one would just be to note the report. We've members have provided a range of comments.
What is that? Yeah, okay. I was advised by the clerk we need to vote on it.
Chairman, I think it would. I think in light of the comments that have been made at the meeting, it will be fine just to note the report.
Okay, right. Because one of my confusions was it was I find it difficult to actually find what we actually need to vote on. Okay, right. So members, we are just purely noting this agenda item. Thank you very much indeed. We will now move to item 8, and we need the proposer and the seconder to agree that the press and the public leave this meeting in accordance with Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? We have a seconder? Okay, all those in favour? Right, you are. Okay.